Hey there, it is Saturday, so it's movie night. Actually, it is most likely Friday. I'm working on this Friday. I'm going to try to get it posted a little bit later. Saturday, I'm going to be making a short film, so I won't have time to work on this. Wanted to get it done today. But either way, it's movie night. I'm here to present another quarantine quadruple feature for your viewing pleasure. My name is Paul. Just finished week 31 of quarantine. Now, all through October, I have been and will continue to recommend horror film themes for my quadruple features. This week, I'm going to change directions a little bit. Obviously, right now, we are very close to Election Day, a very important election, and a lot of people have already cast their ballots. A lot of people are getting their mail-in ballots right now, so just remember to vote and change this world, because right now it is looking pretty rough. So I want to talk about politics a little bit today, specifically political satires. And I do kind of want to keep it a little horror focused. So a couple of the films are more horror thriller territory, but then we have a couple comedies as well. Some of my favorite scathing political satires over the years. So first up, we are going to be talking about David Cronenberg's The Dead Zone, starring Christopher Walken. Now, this movie I'm including because back in the carefree days of 2016, we were in the very early days of the election. This is actually probably around 2015 when Trump announced. He said he was going to be running for president. Everyone had a good laugh. No one took it seriously. But then I started reading The Dead Zone by Stephen King. Now, Stephen King has had a very interesting career where over the years he's written so many novels that eventually things that he's written in these fiction novels eventually come to pass. So he's somewhat of a prophetic writer, probably just because of the sheer amount of books that he puts out. His output makes it so that some of the things he writes about will eventually happen. He's much like The Simpsons, who have had so many episodes that a lot of them have predicted the future, but it's strictly the volume of the entertainment that is produced for these people, Stephen King or The Simpsons. But anyway, I was reading The Dead Zone, and it felt very eerie to read it back in 2016. What The Dead Zone is about a guy who can touch people and see their future. It's also about a politician on the rise, a really outrageous, crazy politician who is running for president. And nobody takes him seriously, but everyone likes to listen to him because he says outrageous shit. When I got to that point in the book, I was like, oh my goodness. And then this guy who can see people's future goes to one of this guy's rallies, shakes his hands, sees a flash of the future that this guy becomes president and, uses the nuclear code to set off explosions and destroys the world. He's a very inept, power-hungry, corrupt president. And that's when I really started getting freaked out, and I was like, oh my God, Trump might become president. And then as the months unfolded after that, things started getting more and more likely that he was going to be until election night. So The Dead Zone, the reason we're watching this, not that it's an incredibly astute satire necessarily, it's just very prophetic of where we're at now. So I just wanted to revisit this one for those reasons. That one is obviously directed by David Cronenberg, adapted from a novel by Stephen King. What is cool about Stephen King is he has a big interconnected universe for his writing, and David Cronenberg doesn't shy away from some of the characters that are introduced that are from other books. For example, there is a serial killer that they talk about in Cujo, and it's the kid is afraid of being haunted by this serial killer who died. And The Dead Zone, we actually see that serial killer in action. The beginning of the movie is about that serial killer. So the way he connects everything is really cool. And there's also just a very visually shocking scene when the serial killer, it's about a serial killer who dies right off the bat in the very beginning. He kills himself when it looks like he's about to get caught. And the way he kills himself, it's not in the book, but in the movie, he sticks a pair of scissors on a table and then he goes like this. And just the visual of killing yourself that way, slamming your face down on a pair of scissors into your mouth, is David Cronenberg is a very arresting filmmaker. He creates visuals that really stick with you and haunt you. And go ahead and write his name in. Don't write his name in. Don't write his name in. Okay, so let's get to some of these other movies. Probably the greatest political satire of all time: Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. This one is a pitch black comedy about the world that is potentially going to end, and there are all... Squeaker, stop it. What are you doing? There are all of these politicians gathered around in the war room trying to figure out the best course of action. They're trying to get in contact with the people that are flying... Dude, are you serious? Stop. It's about an accidental nuclear attack that is going to set off a chain of events that's going to ultimately destroy the world. The movie came out in 1964, right in the height of the Cold War. Everyone was afraid of nuclear bombs. So doing a comedy during that time was pretty risky. And what's amazing is this is the only straight-up comedy that Kubrick ever made. He dabbled in different genres more effectively than any other filmmaker. I mean, he did horror with The Shining, marital dramas with Eyes Wide Shut, war movies with Full Metal Jacket, a comedy with Dr. Strangelove. All of his movies are pretty funny. He has elements of comedy in all of them, but this is the only one that you could really categorize as straight up comedy. But yeah, it's a pitch black satire. Peter Sellers, he's in 3 roles in this, and he is great in all of them. And it's just a wild film that basically just shows the monkey farm that the government is when they're trying to deal with a situation that has gone beyond them. So it's pretty reflective of the times, and this one has gone down in history. It's just one of the greatest. Okay, so this next one, I actually really enjoyed this, even though a lot of people have some qualms with it. But I wanted to talk about this one because it has a very interesting history for how this actually wound up getting released. I think this one is non-stop fun. It's 90 minutes. It's a brisk watch. It's scary. It's funny. It's thrilling. It is The Hunt. Now, The Hunt is fascinating because when this movie was about to come out, a couple things happened. There was a string of shootings in the U.S. People were saying that the movie was in poor taste to come out because people get hunted in the movie. The other reason is Trump caught wind of what the movie was about, which was about Trump supporters, extreme right-wing people being hunted by extreme left-wing people. And I guess on the surface, if you're, living in MAGA world, you could find that sort of thing offensive. But the way they send up both sides is kind of equally skewering. And there are a lot of people that get annoyed with the movie for that reason, on one side or the other. But essentially, Trump started tweeting about the movie before it ever came out because he heard what it was about, and that caused sort of a firestorm against this movie. And for those 2 reasons, they wound up pulling it from release for a number of months. I think like 7 months went by, and I was really excited about seeing it. And they dropped it in theaters just a couple weeks before the country shut down. So I didn't even have a chance to see The Hunt when it was in theaters. So I had to put off seeing it for another 4 or 5 months until it came to a drive-in. So I went and saw it in a drive-in, and I had a really good time with it. I thought it was a good political satire. I thought it was a good kind of horror comedy. It's constantly spinning what you think is going on its head. There's really great performances. Betty Gilpin is in this. I think that's her name. She's wonderful. Hilary Swank is great as well. But I really just think it is a wonderful send-up of how divided we are, especially online. Now, I'm not going to give the ins and outs of the plot of what's going on, but it is about sort of the damning things people say on the internet, whether it's true or not, how quickly rumors spread, and how quickly that can dramatically alter someone's life. And there are a bunch of people that are sick of that and wanting to take measures into their own hands. So both sides are equally ridiculous in this movie. I think it's a fair shake of politics in general and the internet and cancel culture. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people thought it was like, oh, you're going to make fun of the left too. Ooh, very risque. But, it's just basically saying, like, everyone's kind of a fucking moron, and we're all so quick to anger. And it's funny that that's what the movie's about, and everyone got so quick to anger about the movie, and it got postponed or canceled for a short amount of time before it was finally able to be released. But I think it's a perfect movie for right now. The way we interact with people online, the way we kind of consume our media. I think this is a pretty astute analysis of all of that. Okay, let's hop on to our fourth and final film, Charlie Chaplin's masterpiece, The Great Dictator. This came out in 1940. So World War II is going on, starts around like 1939-ish. So the fact that a movie came out so early in the extreme rise to power that Hitler had. Hitler had been in the public's eye for a number of years before that. He started around 1933, started rising to power. But 1939 is when it was like, oh, well, now war is starting. So early in the war, for such a prominent American filmmaker to come out with such extreme commentary on what's going on was incredibly bold, especially for a person in Chaplin's position where he had so much power in the film industry. To put that at risk was very bold of him. It's about a Jewish barber who happens to look exactly like a dictator that is rising to power named Adenoid Hinkle. And he makes good fun of Adolf Hitler in the way that he did his speeches, in his onstage persona. It is really fucking funny and amazing to see when so many political satires really just whiff. Satires in general, you know, sometimes they don't really have any teeth, they don't really have anything to say. You look at something like, I'm sorry, I know everyone loves it, but Jojo Rabbit had no bite to it. You know, it's like, ooh, we're gonna follow this little Nazi as he realized being Nazi is bad. Well, yeah, no shit. There's nothing really there. There's not really any edge to it, and making a movie like that today, it's not really like super bold, even though people really love it, and I'm glad people take away the message that Nazis are bad, at least half the country. He actually had a lot to say during a very important time, and his character gives a very impassioned speech for why we need unity, why we need good leaders in this world, and why we need to be smarter than kind of the sheep that follow very evil people. It's very funny. You would not think that a movie at that time about such a horrible thing that's going on, you wouldn't think that the comedy would land because it was so fresh at the time. You look at it now and it's very easy to separate yourself from the events that are going on, but it's amazing that it was such a funny and effective comedy in the middle of such tragedy that was going on. And it just shows that, you know, if you really have deft writing and an open heart and great performances, that you can really make satire at any point. As much as Trump has sort of killed satire, because anything that happens now is so outrageous and we believe everything we see, we can't really make a satire anymore. So even if stuff is being made now kind of satirizing our current time, there's not a lot of it. That's why I think this is one of the better ones. You know, we can still kind of send messages about periods of time, and all of these movies do focus on a very different period of time. So to recap, the movies that we are going to be watching tonight for political satires: The Dead Zone. You know, this one is more of just like a political thriller. I would really hesitate to call this satire until the Trump presidency came along, and now this movie is sort of... if this movie came out now, we would call it a satire because the character would be Trump, but it's not. It's played by Martin Sheen, who would later go on to be another president in The West Wing. So The Dead Zone is what we're kicking off, just because it is so reflective of what happened back in 2016. Then we're going to watch Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, Dr. Strangelove, one of the greatest political satires ever made. And then we're going to watch the very recent The Hunt, which is a political satire of kind of our current political movement and how personally people take things and the way we consume all of our media online. And finally, we're going to wrap up with Chaplin's masterpiece, The Great Dictator. Very funny, very moving, and a very bold film for 1940, which really shows why Charlie Chaplin is one of the greatest of all time. So those are the four movies that we're going to be watching today for political satires. Really, I just want to say vote. This election is so important. Get out there and vote. Cast your vote. If you're thinking about voting for Trump, just fucking have your head examined. What is wrong with you? Look at the state of the world. This is terrible. We need to get this clown out. We need to get this reality TV host out of the fucking White House. If you watched Biden's town hall last night, I did not click over to Trump's, but I watched Biden's, and it was just like a guy talking about policies that they want to enact, and he talking about plans, and it was just very refreshing to have a nice, boring, down-to-earth guy talking about what they want to do to improve the economy, to improve global warming, to improve the world. And it's just nice to actually hear plans. And it should be dull, you know? It's not about TV ratings. It's not about the crazy shit you can say to get people to tune in. And even as dull as it was, and as just straightforward of a town hall meeting as it was, with Biden just very straightforward answering questions, it still beat Trump's crazy, sweaty shit show in ratings. So I think it just shows that we're all over it. This experiment has failed horribly. And if it continues on, I mean, it's crashing this country into the ground. I mean, this is the fall of the Roman Empire all over again if we re-elect this fucking orange clown. Just don't. I know the, like, my 10 loyal followers who watch these videos aren't voting for him, but, you know, if this happens to get in front of my uncle, who's probably going to be voting for Trump, come on, don't do it. Just think about your grandkids. Think about the future. Think about where we are now. Don't think about owning the libs. Just think about what is best for this fucking country, because obviously it's not him. Okay, I'm done. Whatever. So those are movies we're going to be watching. We're going to be looking at political satires today. Go vote. Thanks for watching. See you next week.